Well, we're still keeping our focus on the lingering fuel situation in Nigeria, and joining us on the set to do more to that is Jide Ogunso, our data and information analyst. Jide, you've been looking at this scenario to this time. As a matter of fact, you've backdated it to some evidence that points to the same kind of situation we're pointing today. What did you find?
There are several ways we could look at this, but let's particularly look at what had happened a third of a century ago, December 25, 1984. The headlines were very similar to what we face today, and that was, it's a fiesta with long fuel scarcity. Those were the headlines. The challenge we have is, if we look at the content of the headlines, the fiesta with fuel shortage, there were three major players. It was the NNPC. It was the NNPC accusing the major marketers of holding the fuel. And it was concerns on, is there a supply-demand imbalance? And so if you pick up this newspaper and read the headlines, you will feel you're reading a newspaper set in 2017. Same accusations, same players. And today we really do have a bicameral National Assembly. And I'm not talking about the senators and the House of Reps. I'm talking about Moman and Ipman. So that's the bicameral legislature that we have today. Sometime last year, I got onto a plane after making several frantic phone calls. I wanted to see the great man, Alhaji Shehu Shagari, and eventually I got to see him. So I flew, and I found myself in Sokoto. Now, the purpose of that visit was to find out just one thing: what had happened in 1979 and 1983. And even though this great man isn't as audible as he was in 79 and 83, we had a discussion in his living room, which also assisted me with the research that concluded that one of the things that led to President Buhari taking power in 1983 was that on April 20th, 1982, just 1 year to the 1983 election, President Shagari had increased the price of fuel from 15 kobo to 20 kobo. Just 1 year before the election. That was the conclusion. And so even though 5 kobo does seem to be such a small amount, 5 kobo was so significant to have influenced what had happened in 1983. And so today we've heard a lot of discussions about the economics of the fuel shortage. Today, let's talk about the politics behind the fuel shortages. Now, there's something interesting, and that is President Obasanjo had followed and understood how difficult it is to increase fuel price 1 year to an election. And we'll talk about his own strategy shortly. And it will, I think, you'll be very excited about the evidence. But today, let's also really ask ourselves, is there reason to panic? Why are Nigerians panicking? And that is because Nigerians have a good memory. In our almost 6 decades history, we've seen 16 increase in fuel pump price, 16. And 12 out of that 16 happened in the first half of the year. To be even more specific, the most fuel price increase happens in the month of January. So all this agitation isn't madness. It is not madness. January 1st, 1989, President Babangida had increased the fuel price from 42 kobo to 60 kobo. January 1st, 2002, Obasanjo had increased the fuel price as well from 22 naira to 26 naira. January 1st, 2012, you remember what happened. 65 naira under President Jonathan. to 141 naira. And so these are the reasons why there's agitation. Two reasons. First, most fuel price increase happens in the first half of the year, and more specifically, happens on the 1st of January. And so what did Obasanjo do when he had found out that there was so much corruption with fuel prices and subsidy? In 2002, just a year to the election, he was at a crossroads because he remembered what had happened in 1983 to Shagari. And so he moved the price by only 18%, 22 naira to 26 naira. And then a lot of his critics said he was timid. But President Obasanjo knew what he was doing. Why did we say he knew what he was doing? That was because he knew that fuel price is so significant to winning an election. And so look at what happened. After he won in 2003, fuel price moved from 26 naira to 75 naira. So what he had done was, in his first term in office, fuel price increase was below 50%. But after he won the election, fuel price increased by 188%. So today, what does all of this mean? With all the evidence we have, it means that even though based on historicals, it is likely that we have a change in fuel price in January, it is even more unlikely for us to have a fuel price change a year before the election. And so a year before the election is 2018. It's easy to place a bet that it is highly unlikely for a government that wants to be re-elected to pick that year to increase fuel. Jonathan did it in 2012, 3 years to the election. In fact, his strategy in 2015 was to reduce the price of fuel from 97 to 87 naira. So it will be interesting if, after President Buhari has increased the fuel price once, will he attempt to increase the fuel price a year to election? And that is the politics of this. It is really not just about supply and demand.
But is this a pointer that in January 2018, we may have a fuel price increase?
The narrative again shows that January is the month where fuel price goes up the most. But the narrative also reveals that increasing the fuel price a year to the election is a route presidents do not want to take. Shagari did it, and it had consequences a year after.
So what do you have with this slide now? Recession out, scarcity in.
There are several myths as well. There are 3 of these myths, and let's discuss the first of this myth, and that is we're out of a recession. But could we being out of the recession have led to the increase or led to fuel shortages? And the evidence does suggest yes. Because how did we get out of recession? One sector, crude oil and natural gas. In terms of real growth, as measured by real GDP, the crude oil and natural gas sector grew by 367 billion naira. That is the evidence from the NBS. The NBS does say that the growth in the crude oil and natural gas sector within the last 1 year was more than all other 45 sectors combined. And why did the sector grow so much? Oil prices. And so we're out of recession because of favorable crude oil prices and volumes, but we are in scarcity because of the same favorable oil prices that has led to an increase in subsidy. And that was the same discussion the group managing director that was on the show earlier talked about.
General manager.
The general manager. That there is an increasing margin between the landing cost of fuel and the pump price. Why is there an increase in margin? Because crude oil prices have gone up. But we're also out of recession because crude oil prices went up. So it's recession out, scarcity in.
I'm afraid that's where we're going to have to let it rest. Jide Ogunso, Channels TV data and information analyst, for sharing this very broad view of what happened in 1984 and what is happening in 2017.
Some other time we'll discuss two other myths regarding the fuel scarcity problem.
But of course,